Thank you all for coming. I'd like to call the 33rd annual meeting of the Worcester Research Bureau to order. But before we do that, I think as we begin, I'd like to take a moment of silence for Christopher Roy, a Worcester firefighter who died on Sunday while battling a 5-alarm fire on Lowell Street. His bravery and his sacrifice are a reminder that while we focus on government policy, government action requires good, dedicated people. We offer our condolences to his family and to his colleagues at the Worcester Fire Department. Thank you for your service. If we can take a moment of silence. Thank you. Welcome to our board members and guests. The Research Bureau was founded more than 3 decades ago to collect facts, engage in analysis, and offer insight and ideas for exploring and addressing local public policy challenges. Worcester has benefited from its efforts to identify best practices in public finance, administration, economic development, education, and more. Its existence and longevity is a testament to the commitment of all those who are here and many, many more outside of this room. The importance of the informed public policy and debate. It is a privilege to serve as chair and to work with a great team of staff and board members. We recognize the Greater Worcester's success depends on tapping into the incredible talent of its people, all of its people. For a gateway city like Worcester, this is especially critical as our nation struggles with how to engage diverse groups into leadership. We acknowledge that we also need to do more locally. We are honored that our keynote speaker, Babson College President and former Lieutenant Governor Kerry Healey, has agreed to serve as our featured speaker today. He has been a leader in government and business as well as higher education. Her experience and contributions reflect the value of embracing a diverse team. We look forward to hearing her thoughts. I'd like to call on Dee Moskos, who has served as clerk of the Research Bureau for many years, who will give the clerk's report.
Thanks, Evan. Good afternoon, everyone. To the Board of Directors, you should have received the minutes for the meeting on June 14, 2018. Are there any suggestions, comments on the minutes? Seeing none, I would ask for a vote to approve the minutes as submitted. Seconded? Second. All those in favor? So voted. Thank you.
Thank you, Dee. It's my privilege now to introduce Paul Kelly, the regional president of the Berkshire Bank, a longtime supporter of Worcester, and an incoming member of the Research Bureau Board of Directors, who will offer greetings.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. I'm Paul Kelly. With Berkshire Bank. As many of you know, we recently, over the last 14 months, acquired the Commerce Bank. And I'm very happy to welcome, to provide the welcome for the Worcester Research Regional Bureau in its 33rd annual event this year, right? Also, I'm also very happy to welcome Kerry Healey, Dr. Kerry Healey, president of Babson College. So thank you for coming. Berkshire Bank is a very proud sponsor of this group. This is something we're very proud to do. We continue to sponsor and support this when we were at Commerce, and we're going to continue sponsoring it, hopefully for the next bunch of years for you, Tim. You do an excellent job. I really want to take time to thank you and your team. Abe Haddad, chairman of the board. Tim has done a great job putting this together and supporting the community. Also, Flip Morgan, former president and CEO of Morgan Construction Company. So I do want to thank everybody here. Just want to give a quick thanks to them. A little bit about Berkshire. You know, we're about close to a $12 billion bank, 110 branches in the Northeast. You know, our motto is life is exciting, let us help. And we mean that. We really want to help consumers, commercial businesses, and really help you guys succeed. We're a very philanthropic bank. We got $2 million. We put over $2 million. We put out $2 million in our foundation dollars into the community. In the Worcester market right now, we're very big supporters of many of the redevelopment efforts in Worcester. Commerce Field, again, we did a couple years ago, we did $1 million. This year we did another $500,000 to help the field. Other areas that we did was the Hanover Theater and the Black Box and a bunch of other redevelopment efforts, and even some of the new redevelopment efforts that are going down by the Canal District. So we're very proud to be that way. One of the things you can think about when you bank with Berkshire, you're really giving back to the local community. So you should be proud to bank with us, because we were really proud about providing dollars back here and seeing this area grow. One of the things that we always say is that we have the acquiring commerce. We really have the same hustle, but we have more muscle. We've actually have 20 teammates in this area. We've added a bunch of new teammates in middle market, business banking, real estate, private banking, and continue growing our retail program with Brian Sullivan, who's not here today. So just want to really, also one of the things I want to make sure I forgot to state, I want to thank you. Matt Wally is here today, City Councilor. Is he in the, Matt, thank you for coming too. We just want to acknowledge you and appreciate your attendance. Again, Berkshire is extremely happy to support this organization, so thanks, Tim.
Thank you, Paul. We at the Research Bureau are truly grateful for Commerce Bank's long partnership and ongoing commitment of the Berkshire Bank to our organization, to the Worcester community. In the history of the Research Bureau, Commerce Bank has been our longest-serving presenting sponsor. We honor their recognition that a strong community means a strong bank. I'd now like to introduce John Spillane, Chairman of the Nominating Committee, for his report.
Thank you, Dr. Haddad. It's my pleasure to present to you the report of the Nominating Committee. And I'll tell you that you should be assured that the Nominating Committee's been working hard, meeting quite frequently, late nights, and even with takeout food. And we've come up with what I think is a great slate to present to this board. On the screen, officers to serve a one-year term are enumerated with Dr. Abraham W. Haddad as the chairman, the vice chair, Deborah Penta, George Tetler as treasurer, and Attorney D. Moskos as clerk. Also, you will see the executive committee, and at this time, I won't read it in the interest of time, but we'd entertain a motion from the floor for the slate as presented. Okay, a second? Second. And any discussion? Hearing no discussion. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it. The next slide is a slide which are directors who will be joining the board for a 3-year term. You see them up on the screen. I won't read all the names, but I will accept a motion from the floor. A nomination. So moved. A second? Okay, no discussion. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay. And those directors have been elected for a 3-year term. The next slide are directors who will be renewing their 3-year term, their 2-year term, and their 1-year term. And you can see we've got some great folks. That nominating committee was working very hard to come up with to shepherd those folks to continue to serve this great organization. We have a motion to nominate those directors. Second? Okay, no discussion. All those in favor? Okay. And last but not least, I'd like to just recognize those who are rotating off the board of directors who have served this organization so well for so many years. And I know you recognize a lot of those names. So we want to thank, the board would like to thank them for their service to this great organization. And that is the report of the nominating committee, and I'll turn it back over to Dr. Haddad, who will introduce our executive director. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Welcome and congratulations. He's taller than I am. Well, congratulations to our new board members. And we look forward to working with you. At this time, we want to express our appreciation to the following supporters of our work. Sandy Dunn and staff at the DCU Center, who are true partners working with us to put this event in many forums throughout the year together. Our board of directors and especially the executive committee. For those of you out here, would you please stand to be recognized? Executive committee and directors. Yet again, we offer special recognition of the Commerce Bank and the division of the Berkshire Bank, presenting sponsor for this annual meeting. As you review our program and annual report, we encourage you to pay special attention to the list of our generous sponsors, including businesses, foundations, and individuals. These contributors provide financial and in-kind support year after year, especially such long-term partners as Polar Beverages, Hanover Insurance, Massport, Fallon Health, Rand Whitney, Country Bank, and AbbVie. Two organizations that provide significant support on a pro bono basis to support our various operations include Deborah Penter and her team at Penter Communications, who maintain our website and design all of the beautiful annual meeting materials you have in front of you. Greenberg, Rosenblatt, Colin Bistoli, especially Rick Powell and Charlie Truitt, provide invaluable accounting services for the Research Bureau all year long. Also, we're thankful to Assumption College and President Francesco Cesario for many years have offered space on or adjacent to the campus. We'd be remiss if we did not highlight Telegram and Gazette, our media sponsor, who helps us keep the public informed of our activities and reports. Finally, on behalf of the board, we thank our research staff, Tim McGorthy, Eric Nealon, Tom Quinn, Mary Beth Burke, and our 2018 interns from Assumption College, Clark University, Harvard University, and the College of the Holy Cross. Their work ensures that the Research Bureau has been and continues to be a leading voice in public policy. At this point, I want to recognize any public officials that are here. Please stand. I know Councilor Wally is here. Are there any other officials from the state or local government? Especially want to highlight the work of City Manager Augustus, who had a conflict and couldn't be here, as well as Mayor Joseph Petty and the members of the City Council and members of the school committee. In preparing for today's meeting, I came across a story told by Will Rogers which seemed appropriate. It's a dark night. A policeman turns a street corner and sees in front of him on the pavement, in a pool of light under a lamppost, a man on his hands and knees, desperately feeling around on the pavement, as if he's lost something that's a matter of life or death. The policeman says to the man, "Sir, what happened? What's wrong?" The man says, "I lost my wallet." "Let me help you," says the policeman, and he gets down on his hands and knees, and in a short time, they've covered every square inch of the pavement, the gutter, and the base of the lamppost, right to the rim of the light. The policeman stands up and a little confused and says, "Sir, where did you lose the wallet?" Man points to a dark alley down the block and says, "I lost it over there." "Then why are you looking here?" the man answers. "Well, the light is better here." The story encapsulates in many ways the approach of the Research Bureau, which analyzes not based on convenience, but based on facts. We are willing to look beyond the obvious places, and that is where the data lies. This approach is essential for objective and reasoned analysis of local public policy challenges. With that background, I would now like to introduce Tim McGorthy, our Executive Director. Tim came to us 5 years ago from his role as the City of Worcester's Chief Development Officer, a graduate of Harvard Kennedy School of Government. Tim has worked in the public sector for the state and local governments and in the nonprofit sector for foundations and think tanks. The Worcester Regional Bureau continues to benefit from Tim's leadership and expertise. Tim?
Thank you very much, Abe. In the Research Bureau's recent report entitled The Immigrant Entrepreneur in Worcester, an initiative coordinated with a series of articles in the Worcester Business Journal, we argued, as Worcester adjusts to the demographic changes spurred partly by new trends in immigration, the community and society will need to adapt. More business owners will speak limited or no English and will represent more languages than past waves of migration to the city. The concentration of immigrant entrepreneurs in public-facing businesses like the restaurant and retail industries means that more residents will directly experience diverse cultural offerings. Worcester's local, yet simultaneously worldly marketplace depends on these immigrant entrepreneurs. Yet for this increased cosmopolitan experience to further the city's economic competitiveness, the community must look for ways to incorporate foreign ideas, literally and figuratively, into its civic and business strategies and leadership. For much of its history, Worcester has welcomed new residents and new cultures. Today, 1 in 5 Worcester residents was born in another country. The city offers a place to live, a place to work, and introduces people in transition to a uniquely American way of life. Yet historically, that way of life was defined and maintained by one segment of society, with women, people of color, and people in need relegated to the sidelines. Despite growing attention, Greater Worcester continues to lack diverse civic and business leadership and a format for engaging in truly productive, community-wide conversation. Yet as championed in our report, Worcester must learn how to acknowledge, embrace, and learn from the evolving diversity of our city. We must intentionally strive to engage more voices and perspectives in our local conversations. We're honored to have Babson College President and former Lieutenant Governor Kerry Healey here today, a leader in government, in higher education, business, and philanthropy, to offer her insight on the value of diverse viewpoints and experiences to leadership and decision-making. This challenge and this need is especially important for us here at the Research Bureau. Our mission is to spark, inform, and engage in community-wide conversations on issues affecting the people of Greater Worcester. In the past year, we have looked at a range of topics affecting a wide cross-section of the region and its people. Among our many reports, briefs, and forums, we have engaged on subjects of leadership and operations through a series of debates with candidates for mayor, city council, and school committee, held in concert with the Worcester Regional Chamber of Commerce, Telegram and Gazette, and Mechanics Hall. We have engaged on the effect of public policies on businesses and our lowest wage earners through an analysis of the $15 minimum wage. We've engaged on youth development and public education through a strategic plan we shaped in collaboration with the Worcester Public Schools and Worcester Education Collaborative. And we have engaged on our regional mobility by cataloging our transportation needs and future potential. In today's polarized environment, bringing people to the table and delving into issues is a cautious exercise. Public policy positions are increasingly dictated by identity or party or even media source rather than independent analysis and understanding. According to a recent Pew Research Center study, more Americans than at any time in recent history believe it is stressful to discuss politics with people with whom they disagree. Yet these conversations are essential to a liberal democracy. In his book, Bowling Alone, The Collapse and Revival of the American Community, Harvard professor Robert Putnam writes, "If we think of politics as an industry, we might delight in its new labor-saving efficiency. But if we think of politics as democracy deliberation, to leave out people is to miss the point of the exercise." This is an especially important warning in a city manager form of government like Worcester. The efficiency gains of a professional management must be constantly balanced by the political understanding of the needs of diverse constituencies. Putnam goes on to state, "A well-connected individual in a poorly connected society is not as productive as a well-connected individual in a well-connected society." According to Putnam, bonding, building strong ties with those who share similar outlooks and experiences, and bridging, building new external relationships with different ideas, is critical to that community's success. In the coming year, the Research Bureau looks to practice bridging as well as bonding. All of you are essential to that effort. You have ensured that over the decades, the Research Bureau has not only survived, but thrived as a critical voice in Worcester's civic life. Yet without your contacts and your networks, bonded and bridged, we are destined to reach only a small fraction of those affected by local policy. We ask for your continued help as we work to engage far beyond the four corners of this hall. Many are critical to our success. Our executive committee and our board of directors, a who's who of local civic and business leadership, ensure that we have the capacity to focus day by day on the needs of Worcester and its government. We are lucky and grateful that our board chairman, Dr. Abe Haddad, is the epitome of a connector, a personality defined in Malcolm Gladwell's book, The Tipping Point, as the social equivalent of a computer network. I would not be surprised if 80% of the people sitting in this hall are here because they received a phone call from Abe telling them to come to the meeting and probably suggesting a generous donation to the Research Bureau for the privilege. Our executive committee gives generously of their time, meeting monthly to review and guide our work, while our board meets at different points throughout the year, offering unparalleled insight and support. We are also a product of and grateful to the generosity of a large community of stakeholders. Each year, almost incredibly, we raise our budget, a phenomenal display of support by a range of unstinting donors. In our annual report, you will see a listing of the many businesses, institutions, and individuals that offer invaluable aid to our efforts. Our contributors represent the civic and business strength of Greater Worcester. Mentioned before, but I'll repeat, a few deserve special recognition. We are honored that Berkshire Bank has continued the special relationship that we have had over the years with Worcester's own Commerce Bank. Many thanks to Paul Kelly, Regional President, who is joining our board, and Brian Sullivan, Senior Vice President, who serves as our local connection. Greenberg, Rosenblatt, Cull, and Bitzoli has been an integral part of the Research Bureau's operations for decades and provides incomparable accounting support for us week after week. Rick Powell and Shelley Truitt are engaged on a near weekly basis with Research Bureau operations. Penta Communications has given the Research Bureau a digital presence that ensures we reach a community well beyond 500 Salisbury Street. Deborah Penta, our vice chair, and her team are instrumental in assuring a professional and effective voice for our findings. I also want to acknowledge the DCU Center and our media sponsor, the Telegram and Gazette, organizations that work with us on multiple events and fronts. Sandy Dunn, the DCU general manager, has served as chairman of our board and was an active member of our executive committee for many years. And Paul Provost, publisher of the TNG, serves on our board and is a member of our Thomas S. Green committee. Finally, Worcester is very fortunate to have a strong philanthropic community. The Alden Trust and Daniels, Ellsworth, Fletcher, Fuller, Harrington, Hoche Schofield, McAvoy, Stoddard, and Wyman Gordon Foundations, the Health Foundation of Central Massachusetts, and the Greater Worcester Community Foundation, all have supported our efforts over the years and have ensured that Worcester can continue to boast an unyielding commitment to informed public policy and public deliberation. These organizations represent a legacy of civic engagement that is a true expression of the Research Bureau mission. Thank you, each and every one of you here today, for your commitment to our organization and our purpose. We value the trust that you have placed in us and our impact. As we go forward, we will continue to build on the bonds we share to bridge Worcester to a well-connected and well-informed future. Thank you.
No energy there. It's my privilege and pleasure now to introduce Lisa Olson, Vice President for Immunology Research and Head of AbbVie's Research Operations since 2012. I've had the pleasure of working closely with Dr. Olson as a member of the Massachusetts Biomedical Initiatives Board. She offers a unique understanding of both science and business developed during a career that has included work for such organizations as Monsanto, Pfizer, Abbott Laboratories. She has published over 30 peer-reviewed articles in journals and has authored 6 patents. She serves on the board of directors of the Mass Biotech Council. We are grateful that under her leadership and as a result of her commitment to data-driven outcomes, AbbVie has become a lead supporter of the Research Bureau's efforts, as well as community-wide initiatives in education, health, and the arts. Dr. Olson will introduce our keynote speaker.
Thank you, Abe. Good evening, everybody. I don't smoke. I just want you to know it's a bad head cold. So it's really my privilege to introduce our featured speaker today, Dr. Kerry Healey, who is currently the president of Babson College and has served in this role for the last 6 years. In her role, she's made some very notable achievements, 2 of which I'll comment on today. For the first time, Babson now welcomes the most diverse and well-qualified students in the institution's history and has taken unprecedented steps to enhance higher education access and affordability. I say that's pretty special. However, she's also, in addition to focused on the school within the United States, has raised her gaze to the outside the United States and has taken efforts to expand global access to the entrepreneurship education that's available on campus, launching the very prestigious Babson's Global Scholars Program for all international students. Prior to her role at Babson, Dr. Healey dedicated herself to public service, serving as the 7th Lieutenant Governor of Massachusetts with Governor Mitt Romney. And during that time, among her many accomplishments, was the successful bipartisan, don't know if that would happen now, bipartisan health care reform initiative, which was the precursor to the federal Affordable Care Act. She's led a number of philanthropic initiatives in the United States and abroad. She's a member of the Council of Foreign Relations and the World Economic Forum Expert Network. She's on the advisory board of a number of different boards, notably the Harvard Kennedy School's Mossavar Rahmani Center for Business and Government and the Taubman Center for State and Local Government. Please welcome me in honoring our featured speaker and very accomplished woman, Dr. Kerry Healey.
Well, good evening, late afternoon. Good, wonderful to see everyone. I think it's everyone's worst nightmare to think about talking to people at 4 in the afternoon, between 4 and 5. It's the witching hour, so I'm going to have to try to keep you awake. And I would be very worried before most groups to have to come and talk about statistics and about numbers, but thank God this is a group that actually asked me to come and do this. So I am really excited to have this opportunity to come and speak with you. As Lisa mentioned, I have had the privilege of being the president of Babson College for the last 6 years, and Babson has really opened my eyes to what diversity of all kinds can do for a university or a college. And I think honestly what it could do for every type of organization. Tonight I'm going to be speaking more about the situation of gender diversity, which still has not been resolved to any great measure, as you will see in a few moments. But being at Babson has made me understand how important it is not only to have racial and ethnic diversity and gender diversity, but also to be a part of our global community. And so when I think about the challenges that Worcester is facing as it becomes more diverse, I think it is going to be a joy for you to welcome these new members into your community from around the world and to learn from them. At Babson, we have 86, 87 different countries represented on campus. It fluctuates constantly, but our alumni are in 114 countries around the world. So being a part of Babson now means that I am actually welcome everywhere I go. I find alumni and boosters and parents from Babson students. And among our undergraduates who are domestic students, 47% of them are now minority students as well. And 20% of those are coming from families where no one in their family has ever gone to college before. So we welcome both the sons and daughters of some of the most prominent families from around the world, but we also welcome people from perhaps villages in India and Africa who have never left their country, never been away until now. And so we're really excited about what that brings to us. I think that that's why our college has had the success that it's had in the recent years, in that we aren't just putting everyone together in the same bin and hoping for the best, but truly trying to learn from each other, trying to acknowledge the differences and learn each other's histories and appreciate what overlaps and what is genuinely different about one another, and to appreciate those things. So with that, let me focus in a little bit on gender, not only in academia, but in business and in politics, not only nationally, but in Massachusetts and here regionally for you today. As I mentioned, when I went to Babson 6 years ago now, I was the first woman president of Babson in its nearly 100-year history. And that was shocking. Out of 13 presidents, I was the first woman. And then within a few years, we were able to welcome, in addition, the first woman chairman of our trustees, or chair of our trustees, you might say. And I think that this places us in a unique position among the business schools here in Massachusetts, and perhaps further afield, in that we suddenly had this emblem of women's representation in a college and in a field where women have been traditionally fairly scarce. And in fact, even college presidents is an area where right now only 30% of the college presidents nationwide are women. So it is a challenge that we face in higher education, but our challenge is not unique. So if you look at government, which is something I've looked at quite a bit, and I started to look at more in depth actually after I left government, in 2018, 110 women, only 29 of them Republicans, held seats in the United States Congress. And that means approximately 20% of the 535 members were women. Things were slightly better in the Senate, 23%, than in the House at 20%, but neither of those statistics makes us feel particularly pleased. However, in November, many records were shattered with 101 women elected to the House, and 42 newly elected women are joining Congress this year, including Lori Trahan and Ayanna Pressley, who is incidentally the first black woman to represent Massachusetts in Congress, so something special for us to celebrate here. But that still leaves us with only 4 of our 12 members of Congress here in Massachusetts, or 25%, as women. We also have women's representation here in our state legislature at 25%. And that doesn't really distinguish us from the rest of the country. This is very common, that women have pretty much plateaued at 25% of representation in most legislatures. And of course, I guess I personally have to note that Massachusetts is yet to elect a woman governor, although there have been 3 women nominated by the 2 major parties for that potential office. So let's look at business. So in the business world, I have to say that the statistics are actually much worse than they are for politics or academia. In the business world, just under 5% of Fortune 500 CEOs were female in 2018, and this was actually a 25% drop from the all-time high of 6.4%. In 2017, women held less than 20% of all corporate board seats at S&P 500 companies, and 2.8% of those companies actually didn't have any women directors at all. So how do we do in Massachusetts? In Massachusetts, just over 12% of the executive officers in the state's 100 top public companies are women, and more than 2/3 have no women among their top paid executives, according to the Boston Club's annual survey and their annual assessment of board membership and women's representation. And in Massachusetts boardrooms, women account for about 19% of all directors. So let's go to central Massachusetts. This winter, the Worcester Business Journal reported on women's representation here in central Massachusetts. 12 of the 17 public companies examined in their reporting did not actually have a single female senior executive, and 78 public company executives they examined, only 6 were female. So business is still one of the very steepest hills that women have to climb. And so as we think about all of the accomplishments and all of the firsts that we've celebrated for women in various fields, it's important for us to understand that there are still a lot of barriers that exist for women in business. So I'm always looking for a silver lining. And I've been working with entrepreneurs for the last 6 years, so I thought, what about entrepreneurs? There's nothing to stop women from becoming an entrepreneur. Anyone can start a business. How has that been going? So in truth, they are better represented. Women are better represented as entrepreneurs than in other areas. There's an estimated 10 million businesses, or as currently reported by the U.S. Small Business Administration, the SBA, 36% of all businesses in the U.S. Are owned by women. So this is encouraging. We're getting slightly better than our representation in politics and much better than our representation in corporate America. But here's the hitch. For women entrepreneurs, the disparity and challenge is the lack of critical funding needed to start or grow a business. And so, Paul, here's where you could come in and start stepping up to help this. Babson's research through the Diana Project shows that only 2.7% of all U.S. companies receiving venture capital are led by a woman CEO. And not surprisingly then, those companies receive only 3% of the total VC dollars invested. So while women may be starting companies, they are not necessarily getting to the funding stage. And one of the things that we found that was particularly interesting was that when a venture capital board, a funding board, included a woman on that panel, then they were much more likely to invest in companies that are led by women. But when that panel is all men, they're much less likely to be able to see the potential in those women-led ventures. So while there are potentially lower barriers to entry for women in entrepreneurship, there are still big hurdles to climb. And I want to emphasize that it's not just the fact that perhaps men don't appreciate what women contribute to business, because that wouldn't be fair. In fact, a London Business School study showed that women social entrepreneurs who are empowered to pay themselves whatever they choose, they're the founders of a social enterprise, voluntarily chose to pay themselves 27 to 29% less than do men social entrepreneurs founding similar ventures. So women have actually internalized this idea that perhaps their work and their ideas are worth less. So we need to be aware of this. We need to be conscious, and we need to counter that internal narrative and the external narrative simultaneously. So what does this mean, and why does it matter? Well, naturally, there are just issues of equity, and I think one of the most compelling reasons that I see for embracing diversity of all kinds, not just gender diversity, but diversity of all kinds, is that we are a poorer society when we're not using 100% of our talent. Talent is not restricted to any particular group, and therefore, if we aren't finding ways to coax that good idea or that talent out of every member of society, then we're losing out. And I urge you all to think of it this way. What if you had to go through the room right now, count off 1, 2, 1, 2, and the twos would never get to contribute to society? We would only be half as strong. And so it's very important to make sure that everyone in society feels empowered and included. And there's another reason. If you focus on outcomes, it's clear that women leaders in every area add value to society in numerous ways. In 2016, the Peterson Institute and EY released a study showing significant correlation between women in corporate leadership and the profitability of those businesses. In fact, their research revealed that an organization with 30% female leaders could add up to 6 percentage points to its net margin. A McKinsey report earlier this year supports that assertion, finding that companies in the top quartile for gender diversity on their executive teams were 21% more likely to experience above average profitability than companies in the fourth quartile. Research compiled by the group Catalyst also shows that companies with higher levels of gender diversity and HR policies and practices that focus on gender diversity enjoy lower levels of employee turnover. They also companies with gender diverse boards have fewer instances of controversial business practices such as fraud, corruption, bribery, and shareholder battles. Diverse teams are more creative and solve problems faster, which makes sense if you just think about it. If you have more perspectives at the table, you're going to have more solutions to choose from. And companies with gender-inclusive teams contributed more to charitable funds on average than companies without gender-inclusive teams. Ultimately, having women at the table improves decision-making across the board. Women bring different perspectives and ideas to the discussion and are more likely than their male counterparts to lead through non-hierarchical collaboration, consensus building, and inclusion. They are the typical collaborative leader. They are also incredibly effective and productive. And this was some research that Ambassador Swanee Hunt and I conducted when we were working on the Parity Project. And I was very surprised to find that on average, women senators sponsor and co-sponsor more bills than their male counterparts, and they are also more likely to be co-sponsors. Congresswomen deliver 9%, or roughly $49 million more per year in federal programs to their constituencies than do male congresspeople. So that's pretty compelling. We should think about that. We can put a value on our women congresspeople. The American public rates women far above or equal to men in 7 of 8 traits considered crucial for leadership. Women are perceived as outgoing, hardworking, honest, intelligent, creative, compassionate, and ambitious. Women are ranked higher in public polling than men in 5 of 7 key policymaking areas, including working out compromises, keeping government honest, standing up for what they believe in, and representing their constituents' interests. So what are the answers with this landscape? There are many ways to begin tackling these issues and supporting women leaders who are going to make a difference in all of our lives and all of our enterprises. From the Babson perspective, one of our key institutional priorities is supporting women in business and advancing women-led entrepreneurship. Traditionally, business schools are dominated by men, and we are working hard to change that dynamic so that women who are interested in business feel comfortable and supported when they come to study at Babson. In the year 2000, our undergraduate class had 30% women students, and today it has a little bit over 50% women students. And I think, thank you, it was hard work. And I honestly think that the change there is attributable to simply making it clear that we support women in business. We have one of the first centers that was focused on women entrepreneurial leaders, the Center for Women's Entrepreneurial Leadership at Babson. And that center not only reaches out to our women students there to support their ambitions and to make sure that they get the connections that they need to succeed with other leaders in the community, both male and female, but they also have founded the first all-women incubator called the Women Innovating Now Lab, the WIN Lab. And I urge you to bring one to Worcester. This would be a great thing for you to have, and we would love to work with you on that project. And since its founding, the WIN Lab has supported 149 women entrepreneurs. And upon the completion of the business, those women on average saw a 3 times increase in revenue in their companies and a 27-time increase in their operating income. They're creating jobs. It works. So supporting women entrepreneurs, whether it's through funding, whether it's through venture funding, or whether it's through a training, does seem to be an effective way to empower them to succeed. In the boardroom, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens now in California, because they recently passed legislation requiring publicly traded companies to have at least 1 woman on their board by the end of 2019. The standards are even higher by 2021. There's a minimum of 2 female directors if a company has 5 directors on their board, and 3 women if it has 7 directors total. So we'll see how it impacts the profitability in California. It can be a test case, honestly, to see how this is handled. And I believe that one of the reasons why women are so absent from corporate boards is because they are absent from C-level positions in many corporations. And having that kind of C-level experience is exactly what board directors are looking for as qualifications for that kind of service. So as we are bringing more women into those top-level positions, I think we're going to see more progress around corporate board membership. I also see a lot of efforts, and I commend them, among women's groups to network and try to educate themselves around potential board membership. But I see a lot of frustration with that too. And I think that part of the problem is that the main way people become eligible for serving on corporate boards is that they know others who are currently serving on corporate boards, and they are impressed with that person and they invite them to join. And so I would urge all the women who are out there networking, thinking about board membership, be sure to include in your networking men who are on corporate boards. Make sure that this is not simply a focus within an all-women's group, but make sure that you actually include those people who have the power to change your life. And I want to talk a little bit about what's needed in politics. One incredibly important way that we can bring more women into politics is to support female candidates on both sides of the aisle. I have to say that women don't write enough checks. We don't write enough checks to have the political power that we deserve, and men still write the majority of all checks in politics. So if you care about gender diversity in politics, I urge you to support a woman candidate. It doesn't have to be a woman candidate from here. It could be a woman candidate from anywhere. But I now have 2 giving priorities, and one is women candidates on both sides of the aisle and veterans on both sides of the aisle, because those are the perspectives I'd like to see more of in government. So I think that if we all in our minds have an archetype about what we would like to see our government be and begin to actually aggressively support it, then I think that we can see some change. And I also think that if you want more women to run for office, we have to think about what are the actual supports that women need, not just to run for office, but honestly to be successful in any setting. So we need to acknowledge that women's lives are still more complicated in some ways than those of many men, to the extent that they are mothers, they are caregivers not only for small children, but often throughout their life. They are the primary caregivers for other people in their lives, in their families, perhaps elderly parents, perhaps people who have greater needs in their family, and that these things are all juggled at once. And so to the extent that we can create working environments, we can create political environments even, that acknowledge those different needs of women, then we can sometimes intervene in a better way. Sometimes women who are running for office might not really need so much a donation as they might need someone to help them look in on their parent, their aging parent, or pick up their child from school or walk their dog. and women politicians talk about this. It's like, I don't have time to go shopping for food. That's the kind of help that they need. So we need to start thinking practically. And I can tell you that as a manager, I have tried to employ these kinds of approaches with my own staff at Babson, and try to acknowledge that both men and women who have families and who want to be engaged and be responsible about their relationships with their families are going to have to leave to go to school to pick up their children occasionally, are going to have to take the call from the school nurse, are going to have to go take care of an elderly parent or an aging parent. And I don't care so much about how the work is done, but I care about outcomes and ideas. I care about bringing people to the table and making them fully present in that moment, not worrying about something else that's going on in their life. I want them to be able to concentrate on the concerns at hand and to have the most productive team members I can possibly have. A modern workplace should allow people to bring their full self to work, and we should be able to be supported as a whole person, not just as an employee. One of the things that struck me when I first came to Babson was that we did a survey, and I don't know how many of you know this is a research bureau, so maybe you all know this statistic, but the average level of engagement that you have for an American worker is 30%. That means that any of your workplaces, if you're average, only 30% of the people are really there, are really there working for you on a daily basis. And when we took the survey at Babson, it was 97%. I had never heard of a 97% engagement rate at a workplace. And it explained so much to me, because everything I did, people talked about it. They were concerned about it. They had an opinion on it. They were, they wanted to advise me. They wanted to be involved. They wanted a committee. So on the one hand, I had less freedom of movement. On the other hand, I have employees who've been there 45 years and they still bring their best self to work every day. And they're still great contributors. And so I believe that what we need to do to support women in the workplace is honestly what we need to do to support diversity, to support men, to support engagement in our workforce. We should all think about how engaged are our employees and what can we do to bring that engagement up? What else is on people's minds? And how can we make sure that their job gives them joy and makes them excited about the mission of your organization? Whatever you create, whoever you serve, whatever you produce, your employees should be thrilled to be coming and to be a part of that team. So thank you so much for asking me to come and say hello to you today. I think we have some time for some questions. I'll be guided by you, Tim.
We have Eric Nealon, who has a
Thank you.
Thank you for speaking on, I think this is an important topic. Tell me how your views have changed since you were in office versus what you're doing now. What would you offer on that thought?
I think that there actually has been a lot of change in society since I left office. And so I've had the opportunity, I think, to reflect on a number of things that were emerging topics at the time. Certainly, I have fully embraced marriage equality and have been, thrilled to have that kind of diversity around me and at Babson and everywhere. And so I think that's an area that I guess you would technically say I've changed, but I think it's probably been more than a decade, since I've addressed those kinds of issues publicly. And I think that I've also had time to reflect on more international issues than I had when I was in office. I was able to work on 2 presidential campaigns and be involved with foreign policy in those, in that regard, and to really think about how important America's role in leading the world is and the kind of moral leadership that we need to provide. And so I think that maybe those issues weren't as pressing. There was more agreement on the role that America should play in the world back 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when I was in office. And I think we need to re-articulate at this point some of the most fundamental beliefs that we have as Americans in terms of supporting our democratic process, really valuing what democracy has given to this country, and to preserving speech, preserving freedom of religion, preserving all of the rights that our founders knew were so important, and making sure that every vote counts. I think that it was an assumption 10 years ago that all of our votes counted. And now I think that we're beginning to question the various ways that either structures or maybe technically even the voting process itself may be subverted. And so we have new challenges, but I think we also have long-standing answers to those challenges, and we just need to confirm and reaffirm our commitment to American values.
I very much enjoyed what we were talking about, but just as a comment, I'm not a businessman. I guess I was sort of, but I was a surgeon here in Worcester for 36 years. And at one point, I had given an address, probably in 2006, about gender in the surgical workforce, which was not very much appreciated, I guess, by some of the people in the audience at the time. I would think of them as crusty old surgeons, and most of them were male. Our surgical residents at the University of Massachusetts happen to be 50-50 in women and men. So it was very easy to observe the efforts put forth on both sides. Men did a lot of talking, and they were okay. The women were outstanding surgeons, didn't do a lot of talking. I came across an article in preparing for gender in the surgical workforce address that I gave. And I was going to quote it, but it was from a fellow at MIT, a psychologist, who did a study looking at what he thought was a schema of expectations of men and women. And he said that when they get to be a 30% or greater penetration in an effort, gender doesn't seem to make a difference. I'm amazed at the data you had on corporate ability once a woman is involved or women are involved. And it would seem that maybe a lot of our companies are led by old men without training. There are more women graduating from college than there are men. So, I mean, we're probably going to end up mediocre if we don't start changing things now. So I think I applaud you for doing it. And I spoke up in that address, and within 2 years we had a president who was a woman in that same organization.
Well,
it helps to keep talking.
It does, and it helps to have male advocates who keep talking. Right? And that's exactly the point that I was trying to make before, is you need to engage all kinds of allies in these discussions, and thank you for doing that. I'm sure that those young women who were watching you that day felt very much empowered by what you had to say. That's excellent. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this important topic. I was jumping out of the seat, people around me can tell you that. I wanted to ask your thoughts about empowering women in business before they become women in business when they're girls, and start empowering them when they're young. I wanted to get your thoughts on that, how you are recruiting, empowering, and inspiring your future enrollees.
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting things that we do at Babson is that we teach our students to be okay with failing. And it seems really important that women, and everyone honestly, but women in particular, learn to be resilient and learn to understand that failure does not need to be permanent, that it's not about you. I think Nelson Mandela was the person who said that I never fail, I only learn. And if you can make that transition from feeling that you are responsible for something that isn't working to becoming curious about that thing that isn't working and really trying to learn from it and say, what should this is not working, what should I be doing differently? And then you can be proud of yourself for taking that lesson. And so we make all of our students start a business in their first year at Babson. And we know they're going to fail because they do not have the skills to start a business. They're starting some of the classes that might give them clues, but they are going to mess up. And we don't grade them on whether or not they make money with that business or whether they succeed with that business. We actually grade them on how they deal with failure and how they pivot off of those failures to find better ideas and how they learn from that process. And so I would say for young women, one of the best things that we can teach them early on is that setbacks are an opportunity to reassess and to become wiser and stronger and a little bit more agile moving forward. And then you don't have to take it all on yourself. And sometimes I hear my students give me litanies of times that they failed. Then I failed at this, then I failed at that, then like, and they're proud of that because that shows that they're learning. And so I can't overestimate the importance of learning to fail gracefully, but also not just gracefully, but with knowledge and curiosity. Yeah.
Hello. Thank you so very much for your wonderful speech. I thought between 4 and 5 and a cold, I would fall asleep. But
I thought so too. I'll be honest with you. I was worried.
I love my seat, and I learned so much from you. My name is Vu Sawyer. I'm the executive director of the Southeast Asian Coalition of Massachusetts, and we serve immigrants and refugees from all over the world, actually. And as someone mentioned earlier about 1 out of 5 people in Central Mass in Worcester were from another country. We have the honor to serve men and women. And I realized that the men who came here from a different country, they work very hard to support their family. However, it is the women who have, from my experience, brought a lot of innovative ideas, fresh eyes to look at problems and how to solve them. Anything from economic development to financial situations at home, children's situations, so much more. And we are very fortunate to have a grant from MGCC to start a social entrepreneurship for immigrants and refugees. And we'd like to ask for your advice, how we could support women who are English language learners, have nothing, have cultural barriers, but they brought a lot of energies and ideas and innovation into Central Mass. What does it take for us to invest in this female human capital in order for us to really make life much better and richer for everyone? Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to point again at our sponsor today as a potential source of ideas and thoughts on this matter. One of the most brilliant bankers in the world is Muhammad Yunus, and his Grameen Bank that pioneered microfinance relied exactly on that kind of ingenuity and creativity and hard work among women around the world. And in fact, his bank only loans to women. Did you know that? The Grameen Bank only loans to women because they know that when women receive income, that goes 80% to their family, and that it stays within the family and benefits the children. And unfortunately, when men receive income, sometimes it goes somewhere else. So I would say that you might work within the community to think about setting up a microloan program for the women who you work with, to help them begin to think about how they could help their families rise up and to be a support in addition to their husbands. So that's a great challenge, and I'm sure that many universities around here would like to help you with that, and I'm sure we would like to help you with that. Thank you. Thank you.
Couple of comments. Is Kevin O'Sullivan here or John Weaver? WIN program, John, Kevin, MBI. A comment on President Healey's reference to the Eunice Centers. About 4 or 5 years ago, Becker College was identified as one of the sites, I think, one of the 17 sites in the world to implement that program, which is an ongoing program. Nancy Crimmin is here, the President Becker, and the beat goes on. Thank you, President Healey. This is obviously an important topic, and your remarks provide an excellent overview of the advantages to government, business, and academia to be more inclusive. It is an honor now to invite Flip Morgan, former president and CEO of Morgan Construction Company, to the stage. The Worcester Regional Research Bureau is pleased to present its Fairman C. Cowan Municipal Leadership Award to Philip and Gail Morgan. Fair Cowan, General Counsel at the Norton Company and of counsel to Bowditch and Dewey, was one of the Research Bureau's founders and a role model for engaged citizenship. The Bureau established the Fairman C. Cowan Municipal Leadership Award to recognize those who, like Fairman, committed their time and intellect to improving Worcester. In your program, you have a brief note on Flip and Gail's many contributions to Worcester and the region. I can speak personally to their leadership in this community. I'm honored to call them friends. Unfortunately, Gail could not join us today, but Flip is here to accept on the couple's behalf. The plaque reads, Titans of Worcester Industry. The Morgan family name connotes 5 generations of civic and corporate leadership. Exemplars of that involvement, Flip and Gail, like the wire rods carefully crafted by the Morgan Construction Company for more than a century, linked and held firm countless aspects of the region's business, higher education, and cultural communities. Their involvement and insight led many of Worcester organizations to new heights. To us, more importantly, their personal commitment to the Research Bureau through friendship, leadership, and generosity has been without match. In honor of their excellence and accomplishment, the Research Bureau presents this award on the 11th day of December in 2018. Thank you, Doc.
So, thank you, Ed. Thank you, Tim. Gail and I are very pleased to get this award because Fairman Cowan and Polly Cowan were both friends and mentors to us. I was telling someone today that, if Fairman ever asked me to do anything, I was going to do it for sure if I possibly could. He was a tremendous citizen in Worcester, and so I'm very happy to have this, and thank you a lot.
Flip has been playing a major role in the mass biotechnology biomedical initiatives for some time, and now we're going to have the WIN program associated, so we're in great shape. Thank you, Flip, for all you've done for Worcester, and I should note that both Flip and Gail made an extraordinary contribution to the Research Bureau with a 5-year commitment that was most appreciative and generous. Thank you, Flip. I want to express my thanks and appreciation to the Executive Committee and board members for your continued service and guidance. We are excited about the opportunities and challenges facing us in the upcoming year. Thank you again to President Healey for your presentation. Clearly, it offers us food for thought and a basis for assessment of the value proposition of diversity. Thank you all for joining us today. Your presence here reinforces the importance of the message we have heard. Your support is crucial to our ongoing work to conduct independent, nonpartisan research and analysis of public policy issues to promote informed public debate and decision-making. We are only as effective as the community that embraces our work. We are lucky that Greater Worcester continues to be focused on and collaborative in these efforts. We now invite you to stay for a wine reception and hors d'oeuvres. Our work is done. A motion to adjourn. I think everybody's in favor. Thank you.